Hey everyone, this is Catherine from Millennials in Motion magazine. This is our 6th episode of Conversations with the Community, and today I am sitting with Christian Gerlach from the Sierra Club. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Christian.
Well, it's a pleasure to be part of your podcast. Thank you so much, Catherine. I was born and raised here in Las Vegas, Nevada, getting to enjoy our public lands since before I even was born and can even remember. And it's become a very crucial part of who I am, and I'm very honored to be here today to talk to you about that.
Oh, thanks for sitting down with me. So what got you interested in the environment and national public lands specifically, besides growing up out here and, loving the Nevada desert?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a recent article printed in the Nevada Current, and it actually details my first experience as a living being. My first memory as that I can remember ever was as a little toddler getting to tour Great Basin National Park, Lehman Caves, and it was quite an experience. The first thing I can remember is waddling through these really dark caves, coming out to a beautiful landscape with a really bright sunset, and seeing my dad and being led by my mom and my cousin. And it's, like I said, literally the first memory I have in life. And one of the reasons why I love working on these places, getting to explore these places, and helping other people have formative, life-changing experiences in these places. So that's a little bit about how I got involved in environmentalism. Really, it has to do with a very heavy story of my dad later in life also telling me about how we are here for a short time. We have a duty and responsibility to future generations to be stewards of the earth. We borrow resources from future generations, and if we don't do things right, those resources may not be around. But if we do things right, hopefully they and we will be in there into perpetuity.
Beautiful. It's like I've heard the saying, like, we don't inherit the earth, we borrow it from our children.
Yeah. So. Funny enough, a little story, because we can get a little personal, I hope, with this podcast. My father had a lot of formative experiences from a step-grandfather who actually got to be around indigenous people at the turn of the century. A German tradition is to send your eldest son out into the world to learn a new culture and experience it, bring new knowledge back home. My step-grandfather got to go to Lake Michigan, hang out with the Ojibwe people, and brought a lot of traditions back to Germany and actually imparted them on me. And I'm very proud and happy to work now with a lot of the local Nevada indigenous community of the Southern Paiute peoples, which their land we stand on today. That of the Las Vegas Band and Moapa Band of Paiutes, and I work very closely with the community, have a lot of personal friends in the community.
That's awesome. So Las Vegas means the meadows, right?
Yeah, Spanish name for the meadows. It is kind of sad that actually even our office, for instance, stands on what used to be the meadow and a wash to a small Paiute village that is now has a rebuilt replica village in the Springs Preserve area.
Oh, wow.
So somewhat beautiful and ironic. We're here standing on what would have been a beautiful meadow before, but very happy and proud to work on protecting public lands now, trying to preserve other meadows and other places here in the state of Nevada.
And that's also cool that they commemorate that at the Springs Preserve. I've never been there before. I really want to go, but now that's even another reason for me to get down there.
A great community space, and we try to have events there fairly frequently, but we love getting people outdoors to a lot of the other beautiful places here too.
Fantastic. So how did you get involved with the Sierra Club?
Another personal story, I took an art appreciation class at UNLV when I was 15, part of early education classes I was taking, and part of the class was to go see an art exhibit and report about it. And I got to go to the art exhibit of Ansel Adams' photography exhibition. I can't remember if it was at the Bellagio or the Venetian. I want to say Bellagio. Was very fortunate to see the beautiful stark images that he was able to capture of Yosemite, moonrise over Santa Fe, and those images so moved me that I knew I wanted to be a part of that type of effort, capturing that beauty, preserving it even more. That was how I heard about Sierra Club and got me interested eventually to do more environmental work, even activism myself in my early 20s. It wasn't until much later, though, that I was doing a lot of that environmental work that I got directly involved with the Sierra Club, but had known about them for since my youth.
Fantastic. What is your position within the organization now?
I am a community organizing representative that does quite a few different things. I work with a lot of great, amazing volunteers. We are always taking on new volunteers, training volunteers, getting them to be part of the organization. And as blessed as I am to be paid staff, we would be nothing without them.
That's awesome. The first time I met you was at the event that you spoke at for Litter Free Las Vegas, and I believe the 5R Revolution group, that is your subcommittee out here. Then they had done a tour of the recycling facility, and then we went to the library and you got to speak, and it was awesome learning about the, you're welcome. It was awesome learning about the Sierra Club because I had heard about them, but I didn't really know that much about them, and I didn't know what amazing work that they did with the public lands and everything. So it's been awesome working with you guys.
Really appreciate it. Very proud to have gotten to speak there. We regularly try to partner with different venues, different organizations to bring this knowledge and information to people. And it's unfortunately often very technical, but we're very happy to break down what is the interesting navigation of government to manage these issues and actually be effective on them.
But you guys do a lot of awesome work with the community and building that community solidarity with other groups. So despite that barrier, you guys are doing a fantastic job, especially out here in Nevada because our public lands are so important and people don't realize just how much our public lands benefit us.
Some 80% of the state is public land and lots of beautiful places to explore.
Right. People just think, oh, it's just all desert. What could be out there? And there's a lot, besides landmarks or what's the word for a species that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world? I know there's a name for it.
I believe I would say endemic species.
Yes, that sounds like it. When I took Environmental Science 101 class, I learned about that, and they touched on there was a few species in Mount Charleston alone that they're nowhere else in the world. And I was like, that's amazing.
Including the endangered blue butterfly species. That's a beautiful one I grew up enjoying since I was a little kid. But what's really interesting, and I love to nerd out on this stuff too, there's over 400 species of bee in the state of Nevada, for instance.
Really?
Yep, many of them are very localized to specific deserts or specific mountain ranges. I
had no idea that there was that many species of bee in general, but just here. So I just learned something new.
Yeah, given the issue with the crashing of bee populations in other places, specifically the honeybee, hopefully a lot of those species are still around, but I would have to refer you to Bureau of Land Management, some of the federal agencies, and unfortunately with their funding constantly being in question and pushed down, it's a little troublesome and worrisome who's keeping track of these. But for instance, we recently got to do our own little public science survey. We trained some volunteers to try to identify cultural and archaeological artifacts through the SHPO State Historic Preservation Office. They were kind enough to come, or rather a nonprofit that is affiliated, Nevadans for Cultural Preservation. They did a training with us, and we got to go out to an area that's unfortunately being targeted for oil and gas right now.
No.
And we're able to document quite a few different things that I'd never even seen before, including praying mantis that who knows if it's been discovered.
Right. Whenever I go out hiking and I see a beetle or something, I'm just like, I wonder if this is a known species or if it's something that no one has ever otherwise seen or quote unquote discovered before and acknowledged that this needs to be named, this needs to be identified. But, there's so many things that you see that you don't think very much of, so it's awesome that there's all these people that care about these otherwise. A lot of people consider them insignificant almost, and they don't understand the importance of every little thing's, purpose out in these environments and how they play into their different chains and webs and everything.
Oh yeah, and amongst those species, I know we're getting quite off the questions here, but I'm very happy to nerd out just a little bit more. Amongst the things we were able to document on our outing was the Thule Desert, and there's a beautiful Joshua tree forest out there. Joshua trees that were ginormous, at least 10 foot tall. Those things grow an inch a year, so it gives you an idea of how many years old they could be. Joshua trees can grow up to 750 years, so 750 to 1,000 years old, and they actually depend on yucca moth, a tiny moth, to reproduce. So just a little beautiful note of the Mojave, and something I'm very blessed I grew up with, exploring and enjoying here since I was a little kid.
Well, thank you for nerding out, because I'm learning all this new stuff. So what is exactly the Sierra Club? When was it founded?
Well, I'm very happy and proud to say that Sierra Club's general mission statement is to get all of humanity out to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. That means showing solidarity for all kinds of causes that involve human rights, indigenous rights, social justice, as much as it is getting folks outdoors who wouldn't have opportunity otherwise. So that is a little bit about our organization, its mission. We were founded in 1892, so we are the oldest environmental organization. Didn't have necessarily the best start, very elitist organization, mostly wealthy individuals, Caucasian, predominantly men, were the ones that were a part of it and started it. Fortunately and unfortunately, they got the ears of very powerful individuals like Teddy Roosevelt, were able to influence federal legislation and get things like national monuments started. The nice thing about those places, it protected them, but I say that with air quotes to some extent, because unfortunately the original indigenous peoples who were occupying those lands were removed from those lands. So that is part of that checkered past. But I'm very happy and proud to be part of the Sierra Club as an organization as it moves forward in history, as we're trying to push that needle towards justice, that we are on the opposite end of that sort of spectrum now, working with communities to make certain that their voices are heard on these environmental justice issues.
That's amazing. And I wasn't aware of just how multi-passionate the organization was. I always associated with strictly environmentalism, so like learning that it also deals with like human rights issues and other issues as well is amazing.
We're still growing on that front, so we need more volunteers who are interested in those issues, and we work very closely with those communities to show support and solidarity the best we can. Realizing again, we're all individuals. We would love to be there a lot more for our partners, but the more that we grow as an organization, the more volunteers we get, the more that we have other people interested in those issues, the more that we're able to lend support to them. But we are very proud to be large part of several different coalitions on several of those different fronts.
What kind of work specifically do you guys do besides working with the community and like protecting public lands?
So we specifically help train people to become outing leaders. We take people on outings. We've got other parts of the organization here within the state that do several different things. So we've got committees of retired staff from different federal agencies, state agencies that help do a lot of the science work on responding to public comments for different environmental issues that deal with public lands, that deal with other issues as well. We've got a new starting public transit committee that is focusing on electrifying public transit, increasing access to public transit. Nationally, we've got facets of the organization that also work with trying to get public transit even to some nature trails and things like that. So more locally though, my work has been focused heavily on oil and gas development. I've got other colleagues that work on trying to get more access for the community for renewable energy, things like community solar, where low-income communities can actually get access to solar, so should they desire, and be able to push the utility company to develop more solar here within the urban footprint of Las Vegas as well. That would benefit the entirety of the community.
Wow, you guys are super busy. You guys do a lot. So what is the Sierra Club a completely national organization, or are there any places that it's not in?
Yes, so we are operated as a national organization that has staff in almost all the states. We've got some regional staff, but in terms of our volunteer structure, they're throughout the entire country, and we've got chapters throughout the 50 United States. We've got local groups that are usually regionally based, and people can plug into those volunteer structures to be a part of it, work with our staff to be volunteers and be part of our work as well.
Does Las Vegas fall under the same thing as Nevada, or is there separate parts of the Sierra Club within Nevada?
So in the state of Nevada, we have the Toyabe chapter, which actually even incorporates some of Eastern California. Okay. And we've got the Great Basin group, the Tahoe Range of Light group, the Southern Nevada group. I would be remiss to forget the other one, which I am, unfortunately, but nonetheless, we've got a total of 4 different regional groups within the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada is considered the Toyabe chapter of the Sierra Club, and here locally we have the Southern Nevada group chapter that encompasses Pahrump, the southern end of Nevada, including Las Vegas, Henderson, all that.
Cool, good to know. What would you describe public lands as? For someone who doesn't quite understand the concept of what that entails? Because we touched a little bit on why they're important, but someone might be like, well, what exactly is a public land?
Well, public lands, and we'll get into a little bit more of why they're important, I hope, but specifically, we define them as things like national parks, national wildlife refuges, our U.S. Forest Service land. So any sort of land that is managed in trust for the public of the United States, the public of the world, which comes to travel and visit our public lands as well. That is what we define as public lands, lands managed by the United States government in trust for the people.
And what would you say makes them so important?
Well, we like to breathe, we like to drink water, we need those things to survive, and those are the lands that typically produce the air we breathe, the water we drink. Here locally in southern Nevada, if it wasn't for Mount Charleston being as tall as it is to help capture rainfall, the forest it has up there, things would have been much different for the habitability of southern Nevada. As much as we get water from Lake Mead, a large portion of our water, 15% comes from rainfall and snowmelt from Mount Charleston and the watersheds out here. And throughout the state of Nevada, there's several dozen different watersheds, hydrological basins that all connect with each other. And it's part of what I like to think is a living organism, just as much as we are individual living organisms. So.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
We've got here, for instance, the work that I'm doing that is currently going on with oil and gas. There are watersheds out by Mesquite in the Virgin River water basin that eventually drain out into Lake Mead, where there's planned drilling that I've been heavily focused on. Several places throughout eastern Nevada are part of a larger hydrological basin called the White River Interbasin Network, and part of a White River and several other smaller rivers that all eventually drain to Lake Mead. It's kind of a transition zone between the Great Basin and the lower Colorado River water basin.
So like the water that comes through these areas, they're essentially, like, does it go underground?
A lot of it is subterraneous flows.
Okay,
and
so that's why a lot of people don't understand the importance of these desert areas. There's nothing out there. It's because it's underneath.
That's a big part of it, and there's fight throughout different parts of the state on water issues. There's a pipeline that Southern Nevada had planned to do at one point to try to pipeline water from Northern Nevada to Southern Nevada. Unfortunately, that fight may still be going on. There's court battles ensuing, and all kinds of things revolve around water. And what helps us capture the water is, of course, the rainfall, snowfall that happens on a lot of the mountain ranges out here in the state of Nevada. Something beautiful about the state of Nevada, we are the state with the most amount of mountain ranges in the lower 48, more so than any other state in the nation. At one point, the state of Nevada was kind of the crumple zone between two tectonic plates, so formed a lot of different mountain ranges throughout the state, over 50 of them.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I would have, if I were asked where I thought that concentration of mountain ranges would have been, I probably would have guessed like the Rockies, Colorado area and everything.
Well, they're the tallest, but we've got quite a few mountain ranges here that all help to some extent capture water, produce oxygen through the mountain, the forests that are in those mountain ranges, and as much as also some of the valleys with dense sagebrush that is further than the eye can see. Oceans of sagebrush, oceans of creosote, or greasewood as it's commonly known here in the Mojave.
That's like one of the few plants that I can always identify whenever I take people out hiking at Red Rock. I'm just like, come here, smell this. Put your face in it. It smells like rain. And they're just like, ooh.
Funny enough, that technical, I wish I could remember the name of the carbon compound or whatever it is, but it's a waxy substance that coats the leaves and is actually similar to the waxy substance that we use in new garden hoses. So if you ever smell a new garden hose, it's a very similar smell.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So what kind of events and awareness campaigns does the Sierra Club do?
We have all kinds of events. We have regular educational events here at our offices that we partner with other community organizations to have throughout different public spaces, like the library that we were fortunate enough to meet at, the Alexander Library in North Las Vegas. We also host more activist-like events. We attend public hearings. We do all kinds of things, and we always offer our offices for visits with volunteer activities. So if we as organizers have individuals who are interested in volunteering with us, we modify our time to work with them whenever they're available. We're here in the evening for this podcast, for instance, and very happy to be part of it.
Thank you guys for being so available. When you did the event at the library, you guys talked about that other event that you did where you made like a makeshift pipeline and the whole story behind that. So tell us about that. I enjoyed listening to that.
So there's been a couple protests, or a couple rallies, I should say, that we did similar activities. There was one in 2016 that I only supported digitally, remotely from Southern Nevada, but was very happy that a lot of my active volunteers were part of it with Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, where they actually had individuals dress up in black garb that simulated an oil spill, and they went into one of the casinos where the Bureau of Land Management was holding its auctions for oil and gas lease sales, where they lease or basically rent our public lands to develop for oil, and then after they ruined it, they give it back to us. So
Of them.
Yeah, but this protest in 2016 was great. It was at a hotel and casino there in Reno, and it unfortunately had somewhat of a negative impact that now all of their auctions are done online, so they can avoid this kind of scene. But it was quite impactful that we had so many community members there in Reno, many who came from Southern Nevada, to tell the BLM that we don't want our lands leased, that we want to keep fossil fuel in the ground. And very hopeful that we can replicate that here, as we have a couple of times. For November the 12th, we're hoping to have a rally in front of the BLM offices. They have strict no protesting protocols, so we can only peacefully gather on the sidewalk in front, take a picture, but hopefully get a few of the local news outlets there to scare off potential bidders from those lease sales, as much as reinforce that the community does not want this here in the state of Nevada. We benefit from prolific public lands tourism, some $12 billion a year in economic activity generated just from tourism to our public lands. Much of it is international tourism, and even by the admission of former public information officers, outreach officers from the Las Vegas Visitors and Convention Authority, there are often times where international visitors will stay additional time in Las Vegas to go visit some of these places like Great Basin National Park, the Grand Canyon, Zion, other places in southern Utah. Las Vegas is 5 hours away from, or up to 5 hours away from 25 different national parks.
Like a center hub, basically.
And even more on a in-state benefit for local communities. For instance, the Elko County Visitors and Convention Authority estimated back in 2008 that some $165 million of local economic activity is generated from public lands tourism. That's direct jobs, that's direct people coming in from even across the world to visit the Ruby Mountains up in northeastern Nevada. Beautiful mountain range I've been blessed to visit since I was a little kid. Funny enough, last time I went in 2017, 2018, found a group from Germany I got to sprechen mein Deutsch with a little bit, and they come, they spend money, they visit these places, and it's something very beneficial to local communities that is much more sustainable than, say, fossil fuel development or other types of development that degrades the land. The other study that comes to my mind just right now is from the National Park Service 2018. They had some $8 or $9 million of economic activity to White Pine County and the local community from tourism to Great Basin National Park. Some 150,000, 160,000 visitors over the course of the year, actually benefiting the local community, spending money and touring the place.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember we were out at Red Rock once, and we ran into some people who were from France, and they're just like, yeah, we come out here every year, every other year for, we go to the strip and we go gambling and everything, but we always make sure that we come out to Red Rock and, do different trails. And I was just like, that was like, not exactly a weird concept, but it was so surprising to me that, these people from across the ocean would make a point to come out to our public land. So that's amazing hearing that.
Absolutely, and it's something that other nations don't necessarily have a full concept of like we do. There are, of course, forests, there are, of course, protected landscapes in other nations, but for instance, in Europe, a lot of their public lands are no longer there. So having such pristine places left on Earth in Nevada, of all places, is quite great. And there were indigenous people here long before a lot of that tourism, of course, and the different groups of the Southern Paiute peoples, Western Shoshone peoples, the Northern Paiute peoples, Washoe peoples, all of whom originally occupied this space and benefited from living the public, from the resources from our public lands. And in fact, those resources were quite prolific. Even up to 10,000 years ago, it's been estimated some 60,000 people lived in the near or around the Overton arm of Lake Mead, from how lush the area was. Mind you, the desert, climate change, both natural occurring ice age changes and now unfortunately the man-made climate change is changing that drastically.
Yeah, it's been wild seeing how everything changes out here in such a short period of time.
Well, I can remember having been born and raised here a lot less days over 115 degrees.
Yeah.
And there's
been the record this year for over 105, the most days throughout the summer.
Yeah, and very interested to see what the Clark County coroner will report in terms of fatalities related to heat exposure. For instance, some 145 people, I want to say, in 2017 died as a direct result of heat exposure.
Oh my God, do you know how many of them were homeless? Because I imagine that's a huge factor in that out here.
Unfortunately, it is. And those who are with low income, low resources, renters who have not the best landlords, for instance, that don't have legal means or legal recourse to take care of the issue, they suffer. I'm very blessed to have a couple of friends who are actually air conditioning technicians out here, and some of them have helped people out where and when they can, just because it is deadly out here.
Yeah, if we would not be able to live out here if it were not for our ability to have good air conditioning and access to water. And I've been talking with people a lot about that recently, about how there's a big potential for us as Nevadans to sometime, in the next decade, essentially, to become climate refugees. Because if it ever gets to a point where, one, it gets too hot, that our electrical grid gets overworked and we are not able to have all this air conditioning going on at such a high and constant rate, that one, we will not be able to power that, and two, if, we've been lucky this year with a fairly wet, rainy season. But if that were to change and we went back into a drought period and we lost our water security, that would also be a huge thing that would affect our ability to survive out here in Las Vegas.
Of course, and I worry about that tremendously as a person who was born and raised here and understands all too well the level changes in Lake Mead. In fact, a more personal story, my mother is from a small community in northern Mexico south of Yuma called San Luis, Rio Colorado, Sonora. It was a point of pride for the community that the Colorado River flowed into Mexico through that community, that they named the town in part after the river. San Luis is the town, Rio Colorado, Sonora, making a part of it. And my mom, within her lifetime, she can remember being a young girl picnicking by the river that was so fluid that at one time they couldn't even build a bridge. They had to use large wooden platforms to kind of ferry folks and cars and goods across. And now, unfortunately, within just my mother's lifetime, it is a dirt bike trail, and the water that reaches Mexico is subterraneous flows as much as the surface runoff from a lot of farms, agricultural channels that have been developed to flow into Mexico over the militarized border.
Wow. Has that happened because of the river necessarily drying up, or the water being diverted?
Quite a bit of both.
Okay.
Quite a bit of both. And for instance, the United States had to recently release in 2014 a large pulse of water that helped revive a lot of the Delta region of Mexico. But we have increased demands, people not necessarily living what were traditional ways where we used a lot less water. And it is something that I'm very happy that there are business efforts, for instance, by the Southern Nevada Water Authority to get rid of their grass lawns, turf reduction at city golf courses, other things like that, and that will definitely help. But we're very hopeful that more and more we as a community will do more structural changes to be more water conscious. And Las Vegas is a model for a lot of that, but at the same time, there's still a lot left to be done.
Right, we have to do it together as a community and be on board with it and not be like, oh, well, it's okay if I do this. You know, everyone else will do it. And it's like, no, we all need to do our part.
And I will credit the community for being pretty water smart out here, but there are always larger entities that we've got to also work together to make certain they hold their end of the bargain as well. But in terms of water, another big threat coming our way for water in general is the pipeline, for instance, from northern Nevada, as much as also a lot of this oil and gas development here in the state. Oil and gas development is a very water intensive process where they utilize thousands to millions of gallons of water for drilling through a process called hydraulic fracturing. That is something that is the primary driver and way that they would do drilling here in the state of Nevada. Nevada has very interesting geology, being that basin and range, that crumple zone like we mentioned. There are some very deep water faults or fault lines, a lot of ability for geothermal renewable energy resources out here, a lot of subterraneous water flows, and as much as that makes us very good for water capture in a lot of these basins, they think it may make it good for oil, but historically there's been almost no oil out here, and they want to start drilling in a lot of places that the waters drain into southern Nevada, where we depend on the Colorado River, and a lot of these flows from the Virgin River, the Muddy River, the Meadow Valley Wash, and that White River Interbasin Network I mentioned earlier. And I think it's kind of sad that if we want to be short-sighted to build water pipelines to steal water that's flowing our way anyway, rather than work with local communities to perhaps use better agricultural practices that would increase flows subterraneously and surface flows perhaps in some of the more rural communities of the state of Nevada. Look at transitioning some of the ranchers that are out there using water-intensive practices to grow hay, alfalfa, as much as we do not want to leave communities high and dry economically, because that's also unfair to them. Maybe look at seeing what can be transitioned, new economies, new ways of attacking climate change. And Nevada is a beautiful place with a lot of potential, for instance, for solar energy, as much as other means of renewable energy. And I really think it's a shame we're doing, or allowing, under this administration, under this Bureau of Land Management that manages much of these lands, hundreds of thousands, millions of acres to be leased for oil and gas development, potentially affecting that water. And very specifically, between just now, the November 12th oil and gas lease sale by the Bureau of Land Management, December 10th lease sale by the Bureau of Land Management, February 11th and March 24th. A lot of dates here.
Oh
They're
God.
doing this
They're
quarterly.
Just like getting you right after another.
Just in one district of the Bureau of Land Management here in the state of Nevada, they are going to be leasing 1.7 million acres, the size of the state of Delaware, for oil and gas development. Mind you, a lot of these oil and gas lease sales are not bringing in the type of money that our public lands tourism brings in,
Right.
which is tremendous, some millions of dollars per year versus a few $1,000 each lease sale. I think the BLM cleared in their July lease sale some $40,000 to lease a couple thousand acres. Recently, they did $70,000 in revenue from a lease sale in October, which again pales in comparison to the public lands tourism and the outdoor economy of the state of Nevada.
So we're up against a lot.
Yeah, and fortunately, we've had some recent successes. The city of Mesquite has issued a city council resolution against drilling in their water basin. The city of Henderson has spoken about it. The Clark County has spoken up about it. The Moapa Band of Paiutes have spoken up about it. There's been recent efforts to prevent some drilling in the rubies by the Tamoke tribe of the Western Shoshone up in Elko, specifically the South Fork Band and then the greater Tamoke tribes. There's still, though, a lot going on, and unfortunately it's quite a lot to handle. So any volunteers listening, we'd love to have your help.
Yeah, I'm proud to hear of how much not only Clark County but all these like surrounding counties around us care. You know, especially like in today's climate, like it's refreshing to know that there is such a strong dedication to that.
Well, there definitely could be better speaking up from counties and other parts of the state. Unfortunately, there's a large history of being very friendly to extractive industry because of how powerful it is for their local economy. That said, though, hopefully a lot more of that can transition to other economies that could benefit us in terms of climate change and in terms of the local communities and economic opportunities. But it would be nice to see a little bit more speaking up, because there is over half a dozen state parks on the table or lands immediately adjacent to them in these upcoming lease sales. There is land close to Basin and Range National Monument, Great Basin National Park, the Ruby Mountains, Ruby Lakes National Wildlife Refuge. The list goes on and on and on, unfortunately. There's so many places that I also can name off because I care about them, have gotten to visit them growing up, but it is prolific, 1.7 million acres, the size of Delaware, in the state of Nevada being leased for oil and gas.
You said the event on the 12th is in front of the BLM office?
Yes, we are meeting behind the Del Taco on Rancho and Craig.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Where is this place located so we can get out there?
We've been fortunate enough to be in contact with property management, the businesses in the area. It's a large parking lot that is mostly vacant. Would be nice to see solar one day there, but we're rallying behind the Del Taco in that shopping center to then walk over using the crosswalk, everything peacefully, to the Bureau of Land Management offices before they close, not impeding any of the employees from going in or out, but just let them know, hey, we are here. We want to make sure the BLM knows we do not want our public lands drilled for oil and gas.
Can we bring signs and stuff?
Of course.
Okay.
And actually, we're having a little Guy Fawkes party here at our offices on the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November, where we'll be making signs, phone banking, playing a video that we were able to make from a recent outing, and hopefully get a lot of the community involved in this effort. We're also very hopeful that we'll have another larger press event too in the city of Mesquite. We're hoping to hear back from them on that, but very much looking forward to engaging the community more on these efforts.
Well, I hope we can help get a lot of people out for that, because this is really, really important. Besides the event that's coming up, are there any other major events that you would like to mention, whether by the end of the year or going into next year?
So we're We have regular local volunteer meetings on the first Wednesday of every month. I have regular events throughout the year that do vary because of needs or certain environmental issues coming up as they come up. But we're hoping to start regularly showing the Bureau of Land Management with these lease sales. They're being announced with enough time to try to organize the community around them and really let the Bureau of Land Management know. There will be other events with other parts of the Sierra Club, like our local, I don't want to say recycling committee because they don't like that, their local 5R Revolution Committee, recycle, rot, reuse, refuse, reduce. Great things to try to do.
I got the opportunity to sit there. My co-leader, Angel, got the opportunity to sit down with Monsi, who's the head of that committee.
Excellent.
And we got to do an interview with her and get more information out about them.
Great.
I love the work that they do.
And they have a wash cleanup coming up very soon. For instance, on the 9th, I'll be tabling at the Friends of Nevada Wilderness downtown at Zappos headquarters. They've got a wild and scenic film festival that they do. I'll also be tabling or stopping in with the Moapa Band of Paiute. They've got a powwow on the 2nd and the 3rd of November over that weekend. We've got our Guy Fawkes Day event coming up on November 5th. There is the in-person rally that we're doing on the 12th of November, and then several other social events. In fact, trying to get one together with the Campfire Open Mic Night, hopefully, because we like that name, Campfire.
Fantastic. And you guys have all these events like posted on your Facebook and everything, right?
Yeah, primary way to follow us is through Facebook, to some extent as well. Instagram, I need to be better about posting some of the events there, but it's at OA_NV or on Facebook, Our Wild America Nevada.
Okay.
Our Wild America Nevada. We've also got the Southern Nevada Group, Sierra Club Facebook page, but if you just look up Sierra Club Nevada, lots of things there.
I know I follow a couple different things from you guys, so I got to remember which one is which. I know you've mentioned a couple groups that you collaborate with, but are there any other organizations, businesses, or people that you work with that you want to mention that help promote what the mission of the Sierra Club is?
Well, there's so many to mention. We work in several different coalitions. There is Chispa Nevada, Nevada Conservation League, Get Outdoors Nevada. All of these organizations doing great work. We work with them to the best of our ability and as often as possible. A lot of times we have a lot of events that we collaborate on, so please make sure you follow us, those other organizations, and get involved. And we often work sometimes more on the heavier policy side of stuff, but we have great outings leaders locally that have been volunteering with Sierra Club for decades, several of whom are doctorates in geology, for instance, and can tell you more than you'd ever want to know about the desert out here.
Beautiful. So there's a lot for people to get into no matter what their interests or their concerns are.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Are there any recent developments with the organization that you'd like to share?
Well, we are gearing up very much for a lot of issues regarding the oil and gas leases here in the state. We've got efforts to try to electrify public transit, fleet vehicles, and all of these points at which you can connect with the Sierra Club here locally, the chapter, the local volunteer group, myself, Monsi with our 5R Revolution, the other organizers from our Beyond Coal campaign, Amy Corpus, as well as new transportation, clean transportation for all organizer coming on soon. So ample opportunity to help us get other people engaged, actively speak up on issues, signing petitions, gathering petitions, hanging out with us at more social events, all kinds of things.
So lots of opportunity.
Yep.
What are some of the greatest achievements of the organization in your opinion?
Well, here locally, I have to credit my colleagues, a series of colleagues that worked on the issue for helping the Moapa Band of Paiute, along with Earth Justice, or to close down the Reed Garner coal burning power plant. That was a huge, tremendous effort by the Moapa Band of Paiute community, the greater community surrounding it too, where they had a coal burning power plant spewing horrible toxic coal ash and dust out into the community and literally cutting people's lives by some 20 years in some cases. So it was a great victory here locally. That was great to see. We saw also recently the closure of the Valmy coal burning power plant ahead of schedule. So very happy that we no longer have coal burning power plants. We're now moving through state laws to 50% renewable energy by 2050. Hopeful that will accelerate significantly, but there's a lot of victories. Another victory within the efforts of our public lands realm would be designation of national monuments under the Obama administration, 2 of them, one in 2015, one in 2016, Basin and Range National Monument, Gold Butte National Monument. There's also been a recent decision by the U.S. Forest Service not to drill in the Forest Service lands in the Rubies, so that was a great victory there. But unfortunately, immediately adjacent to it, Bureau of Land Management lands are being offered up. So as much as we have victories, the effort needs to continue constantly.
And it's probably been really difficult having to deal with this current administration.
Yes, to stay as focused as possible. It is rather sad to see the Bureau of Land Management, the agency I've worked to influence as much as possible, change its policies so significantly under this administration. Under the most recent Department of Interior Secretary that recently left, Ryan Zinke, who now works for the gold mines of the state of Nevada. Ryan Zinke, under his directives, the Bureau of Land Management previously was able to deny a lot of these expressions of interest, is what they're called, the way in which public interested parties can tell the Bureau of Land Management by filing an expression of interest, telling them they want this area opened up for potential exploration for oil and gas. Under previous administrations and under previous rules that were changed in 2017, the Bureau of Land Management could tell these interests, you're crazy, we're not letting you drill there, bugger off. Unfortunately now, the administration has prioritized exploration and development, and what was once off the table is now easily accessible for the next oil and gas lease sale, where unfortunately staff are being held under threat of their jobs to push these sales forward and push these lands that really have no business being sold or leased. Lands immediately adjacent, for instance, to Wayne Kershaw Wildlife Management Area, beautiful place called Sunnyside. They have a hot spring out there, very popular fishing spot, very nice campgrounds out there that immediately adjacent to them have been offered up for oil and gas. Again, some of these other more pronounced places, Great Basin National Park, within 10 miles of Wheeler Peak, there are parcels being offered that would be looked at for oil and gas development. So 1.7 million acres is a lot of land.
And for the people who work in these, not just the administration, but in like the BLM and the Department of the Interior, who, as you say, are like essentially having their jobs threatened, it really comes down to like making the decision of whether they stay and try to do the best job that they can do to still protect these lands without letting other interests come in that would take their jobs immediately and further whatever agenda is currently being pushed, which is selling all this land.
I can't speak for the Bureau of Land Management, but the actions of the administration speak for themselves with the efforts to move Bureau of Land Management operations further out west and actually literally share offices with oil and gas developers. So it's very sad for local longtime staff that face a lot of threats from trying to speak up, but very hopeful things will change in terms of what's being done federally, the administration-wise, and that our efforts will influence them sufficiently. Very happy that, again, the community of Mesquite, which is traditionally, say, not as conducive to protections of public lands as, say, other places. They benefit from them tremendously in terms of tourism, but even they have spoken up on this because of concerns to their water supply. City of Mesquite passing a city council resolution telling the Bureau of Land Management not to lease in the water basin where they draw their waters from, and very hopeful that we are doing what's necessary to influence the Bureau of Land Management.
That's awesome, and especially since everyone wants to make it seem like the issue of environmentalism is this partisan issue when it doesn't matter, what sort of political affiliation you have. You can still care about the environment, care about our public lands, care about, whether it's like climate change, renewable energy, all these things. You can still want to progress those ideas without essentially necessarily being called a progressive.
Well, I don't necessarily like to title people. I like to live our internal expectations to let people speak for themselves, but there are several people that are speaking up about this issue that have traditionally not been on the same side as Sierra Club, for instance, and it's very refreshing to see, but we're hopeful that this will do the influencing necessary to prevent a lot of long-term damage to the state from oil and gas development and accelerate our clean energy economy.
Yeah, you just got to keep essentially keeping the good fight going.
Absolutely.
And like we said, raising the community solidarity, the awareness, the education about it, letting people know not only just how important these things are, but why they're important, because without having that knowledge, a lot of people, they don't understand. They're not exposed to that information. They're not exposed to what benefits can be realized through these public lands and what they have to offer. Like you said about essentially the ecotourism, right? Environmental tourism and how much money it brings into our economies.
And if you're ever interested, as part of Millennials in Motion, to go out to some of these places, kind of capture some of it yourself, always happy to take you out. There's a lot of beautiful places in the state that need to be, the public needs to know about so that they can care about it and have that personal connection too. I'm very blessed that I grew up with those things, but unfortunately, living our day-to-day lives, just trying to survive, get by, often the ability and interests can escape us, and I'm very happy to provide a little bit of a window into that type of perspective here on this podcast, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to take you up on that offer. Like I've said, we've done a couple cleanups. They've mostly been up at Mount Charleston with Go Mount Charleston, but we'd love to do something like that where we can maybe get if you know a place that maybe needs a little bit of, what's the word, R&R or something?
A little bit of love, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's quite a few places. I'm happy to have worked with local community partners. We help clean up Level Canyon, like Get Outdoors Nevada, the local Camp Cartwheel, which is in part ran by the Cancer Foundation, Nevada Cancer Foundation, working to clean up Level Canyon. Unfortunately, getting that area cleaned up, and there's been a shooting ban in the area. It's pushed some of the shooters to go to other places and unfortunately not practice the leave no trace principles. So there's a lot of opportunities. Also just getting out on public lands, getting a little bit of bravery to download some offline maps sometimes and make sure you have a half decent vehicle, or if not, you can walk to a lot of these places, get involved with Sierra Club to get out those places. And it's something that I'm very passionate about and happy to get to do here.
Well, we would love the opportunity to collaborate on that. What are, besides, like we've said, this current administration and I guess to an extent a lack of education about the public lands, what are some of the biggest obstacles and hindrances to the Sierra Club that are standing in the way of saving these public lands?
Well, I think I covered it pretty well. The current administration, in terms of the Bureau of Land Management, the presidential office, we try very hard to influence the right decisions. There's currently, at the federal level, a lot of things going on that you can get involved in, but we are blessed with a lot of access points to our government, and it's up to us as individuals to make certain that we are influencing those access points by submitting comments, writing letters, getting engaged and educated on the issue, working with Sierra Club staff, volunteers, other organizations to learn about the issues, to be able to write a letter to the editor, send in a letter during a comment period, just anything you can do to further sway and influence by all legal means necessary that we try to do here at Sierra Club. And coming out to public rallies, coming out to events, showing up to public meetings and public hearings so that you can have an influence and say on these things. So it unfortunately takes a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice for one to get heavily involved with this stuff, but it's well worth it because that's where we depend on our water for, these lands that we depend on economical tourism for, so many different things.
And have you seen a recent increase in support and having people come out to different things, particularly because of the way this administration has been essentially attacking our public lands?
Yes, we were very blessed to see a huge increase and surge in people caring, being involved, actively participating in Sierra Club and our activities, but things are kind of going in a lull, and it's always a constant need and effort to keep people engaged and keep people being part of the effort and building communities within communities to keep these movements going. And very blessed and happy to be here at Sierra Club doing the best effort to try to get that going.
And what are the best ways that people can help protect the environment and the public lands? And then from that, how can they get involved with the Sierra Club to support the organization and to protect the environment and the public lands?
So again, coming out to our cleanups, helping us organize cleanups, becoming a trained outings leader, for instance, where you can actually lead outings for the Sierra Club. We cover training materials, cost of CPR training. So there's several different ways and aspects to get involved. Working with me, our local volunteer structure, on all host of issues, whatever you care about, there's a facet to kind of work within Sierra Club on that issue, like public lands, helping us get people out to events, actually being part of events, and learning a little bit about the issues yourself so that you can actually help lead others and train more leaders yourself.
Fantastic. There's something for everybody to do. What would you say the current outlook and goals of the organization right now, besides like what's coming up with your upcoming events and everything going on with these gas and oil leases?
So specifically my work on those goals is to dissuade the Bureau of Land Management by showing large public opposition to these gas lease sales, how much people love these public lands, these special places that are being targeted for oil and gas development. That includes getting people to write letters to the editor, to their local paper. We've had writing workshops, teaching people how to submit more technical comments and learning about basics of some hydrology, basics of biology, basics of archaeology, to actually even get them out to see these places, document them themselves, and then tell the BLM what's there so that they don't damage it or mess with it. And very happy and proud to do all that kind of work to get people trained on that kind of stuff. And I've learned a lot in that process myself, becoming a little bit of a jack of all trades somewhat.
That actually brings me to my next question. What have you learned from your involvement in the organization and the work that it does?
That's a lot of it. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to understand hydrology to the level and extent I have. I have been able to learn to navigate government pretty well, and how to influence it where and when possible for the environmental victories that we need. Very happy to see a lot of acceleration here in Southern Nevada on renewable energy at the state level. But again, there's still other facets that need to be worked on, and this oil and gas development is a big one. And I am very happy that I've learned how to work a lot with the local community, but we can always be better on those kind of things, because it's difficult to try to manage volunteers sometimes. It's difficult to try to get more people involved, but even, for instance, this conversation is incredibly refreshing, and I feel rejuvenated, even excited to do the work even more.
I'm happy to contribute to that. Are there any last minute comments for the people listening that you would like to share?
Please get involved, learn about the issue, write a letter to the Bureau of Land Management, their district offices, their state offices, go to their website, Nevada Bureau of Land Management, Google it, BLM Oil Gas Lease Sale Nevada. You'll be able to pull up the website pretty easily, and they post regularly when public comments are due. Sign up for their press releases so that you can hear about it when it comes through email. Watch out for our petitions. Those are kind of ways that you can easily just more passively be part of the effort, but we would love to have more actual individual work. Folks come in, learn how to train other folks to also do this work too.
And you said that there's a couple Facebook pages. You said there's an Instagram. The Sierra Club has its own website. Are there any other platforms where people can get more information or get involved?
We have a meetup page here locally, Southern Nevada group of the Sierra Club. Again, Our Wild America Facebook, Our Wild America Nevada, I should say. We've got our local Instagram, OA_NV. The Toyabe chapter is also got a Facebook page, but we've got a lot of these digital ways for you to get involved. Signing petitions is a good passive way if you don't have the time to volunteer. Getting your friends to share stuff on social media is a good way to be able to get other people educated or at least knowledgeable about it to some extent. So make the ask, please get involved any way you can. We've got all kinds of folks, young and old, involved, so really it takes everybody to make a little effort to kind of change things.
We all do our part. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and teaching me a bunch of stuff about this place that I've lived in almost my entire life that I had no idea about, and talking with us about the Sierra Club and how people can get involved. Hopefully we can get a bunch more volunteers out, more support, and save our public lands.
I can't thank you enough, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye. Hey everyone. Thanks so much for listening to our 6th episode of Conversations with the Community with Christian Gerlach from the Sierra Club with the Our Wild America campaign. We hope you enjoyed our discussion about the amazing work this organization does and that you learned a lot about our public lands, especially out here in beautiful Nevada. And we hope you come out and get in motion with the Sierra Club in the future to help them in their mission to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. Don't forget to check out the various pages where you can get more info and get involved with Sierra Club and their affiliated groups. Links are in the description below. If you enjoyed this discussion, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to get notifications on new content. And please check us out on our social media platforms and our website listed below. Like what we do and want to support us on our journey to help us grow and extend our reach? Check out our Patreon community and get some awesome rewards for supporting us. Thank you guys again for listening. Until next time, I'm Kat from Millennials in Motion magazine, and this has been Conversations with the Community. And don't forget to be kind and be the change you wish to see in the world.